Let's get it going. That's it.
We would like to play.
I don't use the term game changer all that often, but if I did, it would be used to describe the Wiimote. It certainly made the case that the power of a console isn't everything. Almost everyone knew how to operate a television remote, so why not build off the existing framework? All it needed was the right software to support this vision, and luckily, Wii Sports became the de facto product demonstration pack-in title to sell anyone on the concept, which it did. With a simple form and built-in expansion module, the possibilities for ways to play were endless. To complement the theme of the Wiimote being an all-in-one remote control, Nintendo designed the user interface for the Wii to model that of television channels. I love how it feels like you're tuning into your favorite show when you click on a game, with the unique splash screen and music. In the modern day, many of us have cut the cable, so changing channels may be seen as a habit from a bygone era, but at the time, this was cool. The Wii has one of the most impressive libraries ever. By the end of its lifespan, it amassed over 1,600 titles. The Wii is capable of playing Wii games, WiiWare titles, a retro library consisting of the Virtual Console, which has NES, SNES, Nintendo 64, Sega consoles, Neo Geo, TurboGrafx 16, and if you had one of the first generation of Wii consoles, you could just plug in your GameCube controllers and memory cards and play GameCube games on the Wii. It's one of the best all-in-one consoles ever made. Released for only $250 at launch, the Wii was a sensible console to purchase, and even to this very day, they are cheap enough that anyone could get a decent collection going without breaking the bank. Not only was it an affordable console for consumers, but since the console was still operating in standard definition, with specifications not too dissimilar from the GameCube, it allowed developers to make games without spending a fortune to take the leap into high definition. Because of the low barrier to entry for development, this allowed the developers to get real creative and take some risks. The Wii has some of the most experimental and ambitious games you'll ever play. The Wii has one of the most robust and still active homebrew scenes. Modding your Wii takes less than 10 minutes, and there's thousands of videos on YouTube that will show you how to do it. If you're the kind of person who wants to get the most out of their console, or just dipping your toes in a homebrew for the first time, I fully recommend the Wii as your starting place. We'll get into why in a minute. The Wii blocked other region games on the system. As a result, gamers had to organize movements like Operation Rainfall to beg Nintendo to release games like Xenoblade Chronicles in the West. Unfortunately, some titles weren't so lucky. They didn't get localized, and the loss of potential sales killed a few studios, notably Sing. The Nintendo Wii eventually shuttered its Wii Connect 24 services, blocking access to most of the system's cool features like the weather channel, the news channel, and the substantial loss of online multiplayer. For every decent title in the library, there were about 7 low-effort cash grabs filling out store shelves and burying quality titles under a thick, saturated swamp of content. Whilst variety is ultimately a good thing, the sheer amount of titles to choose from could be overwhelming for the average gamer. Chances were the uninformed parent would be buying their kid a stinker. Unfortunately, the Wii still hasn't shaken the shovelware dirt off of its reputation. Motion controls can make or break the experience of a game. Now, many later titles in the library gave the players options to switch over to something like a classic controller to play traditionally, but a vast majority of titles on the platform did not, and they forced in motion controls, which favored gimmicks over responsiveness. If I'm being honest, the only Wiis worth owning are the first generation launch models, because they included GameCube support with dedicated controller ports and memory slots. Later revisions of the Wii would remove these ports, and the final revision of the Wii, known as the Wii Mini, removed component video, internet, SD card support, and to top it all off, it wasn't backwards compatible with GameCube titles at all. Why would anyone buy this?
What 마음에 안 들어?
Bitches don't have GameCube. Let's start with an easy one. Rechargeable batteries. I stick with In a Loop for my AA needs because they're rated for up to 10 years of charge. And it's over 10 years later, and I'm still using the same set I bought. Wiimotes tend to eat through batteries rather fast, so if you're serious about your Wii gaming, you want the best batteries you can buy. Get yourself a cool stand and impress your friends. I have this Hori stand. It's more of an organizational thing than an upgrade, but I've always loved this stand. With it, you can lay your Wii horizontally, slide your sensor bar into the bottom of the shell, and it even has a storage compartment built in for a Wiimote and nunchuck. I don't know why, but to me this looks more like a console. But if you're in the market for something vertical, then get the Monster Hunter Tri-Stand, also made by Hori. With this, you can place your USB hub to the front of your Wii for some reason, and it also came with this nifty controller bucket. Honestly, I bought this at a convention years ago and I was just looking for an excuse to show it off. Was it cool? Wii Motion Plus was essentially the Wii's expansion pack, where it was mandatory to play some games, but in some cases, it was just another option to enhance the motion control. Wii Motion Plus advertised a 1-to-1 range of movement, which is honestly what the Wii should have launched with. However, it does make games that feature swords a tad more responsive and fun to play. If you want to get the most features out of your Wii and install delisted content from the Wii shop, you're gonna need the Homebrew channel. There are hundreds of tutorials on YouTube that show you how to install this. This is not that kind of video, but I will provide a link to a good resource to get you started. The biggest benefit is being able to install games to a USB hard drive via USB loader, which allows for easy access to your entire Wii library and much faster loading times. You can get applications that remove the region lock, allow you to apply fan translations to games that were never released in your country. You can install mods for your favorite legitimate games, and you can also play this really cool bubble popping minigame if you want to. Pop, 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 pop. I don't know how many times I gotta say this, but get yourself a Wii U. Not only do you get all the features of the Wii built into the Wii U's virtual Wii, but you get HDMI output for the best possible picture quality, the ability to stream Wii games to the gamepad, which has its own built-in sensor bar, and it's also capable of running all of the above homebrew goodness found on the Wii, plus the entirety of the Wii U library. What more do you want? It's the ultimate upgrade. Without further interruption, let's celebrate and talk some games. Alone in the Dark 2008 was an attempt to reboot the long-running franchise by making a semi-sequel to the original trilogy. This reboot was released on the Xbox 360 to critically poor reception, noting many glitches and downright broken driving levels. Hydravision Entertainment was responsible for porting this mess of a game to the PlayStation 2 and Wii, respectively. Now, I'm not gonna go out on a ledge and put my reputation on the line to recommend this game, but there is a certain beauty to watching a car wreck play out.
Sounds stupid.
Now, on its low resolution and muddy textured face, you might initially be turned off by its presentation. The controls are some of the worst on the platform and terribly irresponsive. The level design will have you tearing your hair out from the frustrating platforming that demands frame perfection timing from the player. If you want to know what you're in store for, let the opening sequence set the stage for you. In the opening, the player has to periodically hit buttons to blink so the protagonist's eyes don't dry out. Don't ask why, just roll with it. This game is old school in the sense that nothing is blatantly signaled to the player about what the next objective is or the means to proceed. You just blindly click on objects or fail your way upwards through endless deaths until you finally break through a wall of frustration towards progress. It's broken in the most beautiful ways. It has unintentional charm behind it that you would find in a third-party NES game, which was super difficult to prevent kids from running and beating it over a weekend. You know, the kind of game that you end up passing the controller off to a friend to challenge them to try and take a crack at it. Let's see you figure this one out, hotshot. This is a game that I would only recommend under the right mindset. This is putting a square peg in a round hole the game. It puts the fun in dysfunctional. Soft recommendation. Another Code R, Journey into Lost Memories, aka Trace Memory 2, was released by Sing in 2009. Another Code R is a point-and-click adventure game, presented in a gorgeous cel-shaded style with beautiful watercolor landscapes. It's better appreciated if you played the prequel Trace Memory on the Nintendo DS beforehand, which is kinda crucial to know for some plot elements here and there. But the game does its best to try and catch new players up to speed. You play as Ashley Mizuki Robbins, a teenager with big dreams of becoming a rock star. She's beckoned out to a remote campground, Lake Juliet, where her father works as a researcher on human memory. When she arrives, her bag is stolen by a shadowy figure, and she's swept up into a grand murder mystery of which she has a direct connection to. Fair warning, this is a slow burn game. It starts off with a whole lot of nothing happening, and then all of a sudden everything happens. A lot of time is given to dealing with rather mundane interpersonal problems to let your guard down, right before throwing a gut punch or two your way. It's not afraid to get a little dark, especially for a Nintendo-produced title. This is a kind of mystery that keeps you guessing until the end, and sadly leaves you wanting a sequel which will never come. This is the kind of Wii game that utilizes every unique gimmick of the Wiimote in a tech demo sort of way, but it never feels like a gimmick, as Sing implemented the Wiimote and DSi as pieces of technology that are woven into the storyline. Lake Juliet is hands down one of the best looking settings on the platform, and I just love the pop-up book transitions between areas in the game. It also boasts a rather emotional soundtrack that I use in nearly all of my videos, including this one. This game was never released outside of Japan or PAL regions. To play it in English, you'll need a PAL Wii or the homebrew channel where you can run Revolution, which allows you to play it from the disc. I would highly recommend giving this one a chance if you like Trace Memory or Hotel Dusk. It's made by the same people. It features a lot of complex characters and rich environments to explore that Sing were known for. Oh, and you can check out my full retrospective on the game if you're interested in the playlist after the video. Ant Nation was a WiiWare exclusive game developed by Konami. On its surface, it appears to be a run-of-the-mill real-time strategy game in the vein of Sim Ant. Oh, and that's what it is at its core too. So you play as a scientist tasked with growing the ant colony, and you take on various missions to grow the number of ants and level them all up so you can take on invaders in the backyard. Okay, that's not interesting. However, there is a little discussed mode that radically changed my opinion on Ant Nation, and I want to share it with you. Tucked away, there's this bizarre ant extermination bonus game. The backyard is infested with ants, so you gotta stomp on them. Okay, wait, now bust out the magnifying glass. Burn them. Okay, now throw some rockets at them. Hey, I found this unlabeled can under the sink, and I'm gonna spray it on them. This is how the developers made the most out of a boring situation, and I commend them for it. Just keep in mind it's no longer available for purchase, so you're gonna need a modified Wii in order to install it. Have fun. This is not your typical side-scrolling shmup, but few games are coming from its creator, Kinta Cho. The gimmick here is that in Blastworks, when you destroy a ship, you can then fly into its carcass and it will affix itself to your ship as an additional weapon or shield. You blow up ships and Katamari your way into creating a wonderful flying abomination that defies all laws of aerodynamics. You also have the ability to contract all your ships into one piece so you can fly through all the bullets in a bullet hell style. As you get hit, some of the pieces of your ship will fly off, exposing the main ship, and if the main ship gets hit, that's when the player's vulnerable and you lose your life. You get a lot of cool features. There's a full-blown ship editor, which I sunk a ridiculous amount of time into. There's a lot of unlockable ships, mini games, and other neat bonuses hidden away in here. And there once existed a whole online community where you could have uploaded your ships to www.blastworksdepot.com and trade with other rejects that also had this game. All this was rather ambitious for a budget Wii title, and unfortunately this upload feature and all the online components were killed with the end of the online services for the Nintendo Wii. But even without all the online features, there's a lot of content here and a very unique spin on the shmup genre if you're willing to give it a chance, and for its price, I think you should. Calling by Hudson Soft was released in limited quantities back in 2009, and it used to be one of the more expensive North American Wii games alongside Xenoblade Chronicles. That's all because GameStop allegedly started flooding the market with reprints of rare games and selling them as used copies for $89.99 back in 2014. Well, their dumb plan backfired when reprinting inflated the number of available copies and the aftermarket took quick notice, then the price nosedived back into reasonable levels a couple of months later. But I digress. Calling is a first-person horror game inspired heavily by the movie One Missed Call. You play as 4 different characters placed into spooky settings and given a haunted phone with a direct line to the afterlife. The experience can be summed up into open drawers, find a key, and waggle the ghosts away. The English dub is quite special in a manner of speaking. The game is worth experiencing for the horny-sounding ghost calls you receive.
Even in death, the soul remains.
As far as first-person ghost horror games are concerned, I much prefer something with a bit more involvement from the player like the Fatal Frame series. I did appreciate the implementation of a run button, which another horror game featured in this video was sorely lacking. Calling rides the T4T line carefully. It's as safe as they come. By the numbers, Japanese ghost story that doesn't push the envelope or medium forward in any way. To wrap things up, it's not that scary, and I need a bit more than the occasional jump scare to pique my interest. I'll only check it out if you can get it for cheap. Captain Rainbow by Skip Ltd. was a Japanese exclusive title released in 2008. It was recently translated into English by Kirameki. I'm playing my own disc copy and using Revolution to apply the English patch. Now keep in mind, the game is only 95% translated, so sometimes you'll occasionally run into some Japanese characters here and there, but nothing too important is lost and the game is fully playable. Captain Rainbow is a story about Nick, a down-on-his-luck hero trying to regain his former popularity. He hears of a legend about an island that grants wishes, and he immediately sails out to the island of misfit Nintendo characters known as Min Min. Here, Nick has to rebuild the reputation of Captain Rainbow by doing a lot of odd jobs for other hopefuls on the island, and along the way, uncovering the island's great mystery. You might recognize a few of these faces, as the game features Birdo from the Mario series, an out-of-shape Little Mac from from Punch-Out, and some other lesser-known video game characters. Perhaps their inclusion are the reason why this game was never localized, but who knows with Nintendo. As the story unfolds, Nick will gain more powers which are used to destroy barriers to the other parts of the island, allowing for more bizarre discoveries to enjoy. Now, if you're a fan of the lighthearted plots with weird characters found within Moon or Chibi Robo, well, you're in luck. This was also made by Kenichi Nishi, the creator of those two games, and yeah, his dog Tao also makes a cameo here too. I don't want to talk too much about this because I do plan on making a full feature video on this sometime in the future. Major props to Kirameki for the translation. This is definitely one worth checking out.
Chindouchu, ポールの大冒険
aka Pole's Big Adventure. It's alright if you've never heard of this one before, as it was a Japanese WiiWare exclusive title developed by Sega and aimed specifically at mature audiences. Long story short, you're gonna need homebrew to play it. Now, many of you might be thinking, well, what's the deal? Just looks like a poor imitation of Super Mario Brothers. And you'd be right for thinking so. You have this dumpy little cowboy hopping around, collecting apples, and shooting his way through waves of costumed enemies. Things seem rather ordinary until you start seeing some apples with bites taken out of them. Then you try grabbing a mushroom and then Paul grows absurdly big until he dies? Strap in, folks. It only gets weirder from here. Pole's Big Adventure is a comedic romp through a 2D platformer filled with gags that parody other popular games in the genre. Although I barely grasp Japanese, you don't really need to be a native speaker to appreciate what's going on here. Comedy is sort of a universal language. I just died, and then I respawned without a texture. This game harkens back to the old adventure-style video games where you go out of your way to find all the unique ways to die, and that's just part of the fun. When I first played it, I didn't want to put this game down. Pole's Big Adventure left me with a big pull for this adventure. Let's just hope someone translates it one day so we can truly appreciate the full comedy on display here. If you have a modded Wii, definitely add this one to your list.
また UFO キャッチャーかい UFO の中で何されてん
Developed by Sproing Interactive and Deep Silver, Curse Mountain is an odd survival horror set in the mountains of Tibet. Fun fact, it's one of the only Wii games that I'm aware of that came with the steelbook. You play as Eric Simmons, who's traversing the rocky terrain to find out what happened to his missing brother, Frank. Eric comes across a magic axe, which acts as a melee weapon, a gun, and a magic wand that sends evil spirits back to the far plains. Look, I'm kind of on the fence about this one. On the plus side, I do enjoy the unique setting of the Tibetan mountains, and for a Wii title, it displays some impressive looking mountainscapes. In any other circumstance, I would absolutely recommend it to players who enjoyed Resident Evil 4 if it weren't for the forced and terrible waggling QTEs, which bring each battle to a dead stop. In order to get rid of the enemies, you have to first weaken them until an orange circle pops up, and then you have to then click on that circle, which pauses the action, which forces you to waggle your way through irresponsive gestures to then defeat the enemies for good. If you fail, and you will, the enemy will then have a chance to recover, and then you have to do it all over again. I hated that bit of it. Now, if you can get over the waggle, you will find a semi-interesting survival horror in here if you look hard enough. This was also released on PC, and it might play better on there, but it can't get much worse than the waggles here. Even still, I had some fun with Curse Mountain, and I'm only giving it a slight recommendation for the cool steelbook.
It was never easy for Frank to be Eric Simmons' little brother. It started in school, carried on when he started to climb. Everyone compared him to me.
Dead Rising, Chop Till You Drop, released by Capcom in 2009. Brought to you by the Resident Evil 4 Wii Edition engine, which they will not let you forget as that factoid is plastered directly on the box itself. So at its core, Chop Till You Drop is a minced up version of the original 360 version of Dead Rising, cut down to work on the Wii's much lower specs. Many reviewers at the time scoffed at the visual and performance hits taken to make this version happen at all. There's only around 80 zombies on the screen at one time, so you better get used to seeing them ghost in and out as you push on. To make the game resemble the structure of Resident Evil 4, they redesigned Willamette Mall to have corridors. So Frank is going to be walking through a lot of roped off areas, which really limits the exploration. Zombie encounters are far more aggressive, similar to the Ganados of Resident Evil 4. Some new enemies were exclusive to this version, like the zombie poodles, parrots, and a couple of the psychopath boss fights will then spawn as regular enemies this time around. It's a less sandboxy in nature Dead Rising, with a focus on structure and missions, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Chop Till You Drop addressed a lot of issues some gamers had with the original Dead Rising. No longer do you have to worry about time running out to save a survivor or complete a story mission, which might render your entire run a failure if you miss the deadline. The survivor AI is still a little bit on the stupid side, but they do tend to stick closer to Frank this time around and will rarely exhibit unexpected behaviors. Otis, a frequent annoyance in the original with his constant radio calls, was toned down substantially here. This time around, he acts as more of a quest giver that you just meet up before venturing out with. You just pick your mission and bye Otis. After completing a mission, Frank will be rewarded with health upgrades, a costume, or some cash. Money collected can be spent in Cletus's gun shop, that is after you defeat him in battle. In this version, you can actually rescue him before he gets munched by the zombies. Cletus will sell you a lot of weapon upgrades, and you can even buy weapons from Resident Evil 4, which are exclusive to this version of Dead Rising. A big strike against this one is that they removed the photography mechanics entirely, so no more covering wars for Frank here.
I've covered wars, you know.
The missions are just simplified down to rescue a survivor or go blast a psychopath. I feel like the challenge from the psychopath fights have been removed substantially with the addition of smoother gun controls provided by the Wiimote. No, seriously, the formerly intimidating Adam the Clown encounter is a joke. Now, despite it being a bare-bones version of Dead Rising, I do think it's an interesting twist which streamlines the game into a more accessible entry aimed at newcomers. Even though the models look sharp and the textures are muddy, I still kind of think this game looks pretty good for the Wii. By the way, this is the only standard definition version of Dead Rising where the text is actually legible on a CRT television. At the very least, it has that going for it. Check it out. Heads up, if you have arachnophobia or just a general aversion to bugs, you might want to skip ahead here because it's about to get gross. Deadly Creatures, released in 2009 by Rainbow Studios, who were primarily known for the MX vs. ATV franchise, and this is absolutely nothing like those games. Buckle up. It's a third-person action/brawler in the vein of Batman Arkham Asylum, with an emphasis on creepy bugs. You play as either a tarantula or a scorpion, crawling your way through levels and getting into epic bug fights. Your goal is to creep through the level, preying on lesser bugs to gain experience, which then unlocks new bug powers to use in bug battles. There's a lot of collectible bugs to find, and you'll be crawling your way all over surfaces in a 3D space that handles surprisingly well for this kind of game. The tarantula is the more agile of the two pro tags. It can climb surfaces the scorpion cannot reach, and perform high jumps to then strike enemies with poison fangs. On the other hand, the scorpion is more of a bruiser class. It does full frontal attacks with a focus on breaking through the enemy's guard with a quick strike of its tail. The scorpion can also dig its way through walls, which will uncover hidden passages. There are some impressive large-scale boss fights, which were fairly challenging and require a lot of dodging and QTE work. It's an isolating experience with plenty of bugs hissing and crunchy sounds of limbs scuttling about, and it's just absolutely disgusting. Great work, team. I should also mention there's a wraparound story about two rednecks searching for lost treasure, who are voiced by actors Billy Bob Thornton and the late Dennis Hopper, both of whom have absolutely no business being in a Wii exclusive bug game, but being the professionals that they were, they treated the material with dignity.
I mean, my feels like I cut them with a razor blade and poured alcohol on it. You know, sometimes when you sweat and you walk a lot in these kind of britches, it does that to you.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but the story is pretty entertaining. And you can hear how much fun Billy Bob and Dennis were having with this stupid premise. If you have the stomach for it, Deadly Creatures is a highly underrated game that is worthy of your time. There's really nothing like it on the platform.
Little son of a bitch crawled out of the toilet seat and whap, stung him.
Swelling, numbness, and sometimes involuntary twitching. So your balls would likely blow up to the size of cantaloupes filled with Mexican jumping beans.
Dewy's Adventure was developed by Konami in 2007. It was made by the same team that brought you Elebits. Dewy the Droplet is our protagonist here, and you don't necessarily control them, but instead the world itself by using the motion controls on the Wiimote in a horizontal fashion. The objective here is to tilt the environment to then slide Dewy around to collect a bunch of fruit and save these little guys. You can also change the temperature of the environment, which then modifies Dewy's form. Default temperature keeps Dewy in droplet form, which allows him to slide and hop around the map. Now, if you heat up the map, Dewy will turn into a stationary storm cloud form that can dish out massive lightning damage to kill enemies. Freezing the map will crystallize Dewy into a spinning top form, which is an active attack mode that allows for a little degree of movement. It's not entirely precise though, because everything is slippery due to the ice. The game has a ton of things to collect, but I just don't have the patience to suffer the bad controls to attempt 100%. I have tried to sit down and play through Dewy on several occasions, but I just did not enjoy it at all. It lacks a fine degree of control over the motion, which often causes the map to tilt too far, which causes Dewy to fall off the map and make this annoying scream each time. It's even worse when a bit of the map removes the guardrails and forces you to slide through a twisting labyrinth under a time constraint. It's just not fun. Now, if this game was ever modded to incorporate Wii Motion Plus or analog controls, I might give it another chance. But to everyone else out there, avoid this one. Disaster Day of Crisis was released in 2008 by Monolith Soft, the team behind Xenoblade Chronicles. This is one of my top Wii titles that never got a release in North America because Reggie. I have a full retrospective of this game on my channel if you want to know more, so I'll be brief. Disaster is one of the most ridiculous action-adventure titles I've ever played. The game stars Dude Bro Raymond Bryce, who is on a mission to save everyone.
Just great. Steve! Steve, you hear me? Chad!
Now, if you enjoy games with wacky rescue missions and unlockables, similar to the Disaster Report series, no relation by the way, or the duck and cover shooting galleries of Time Crisis, it's a mashup of those two games executed as an over-the-top comedy. It's brilliant. Now, if you couldn't already tell by the mammoth-sized trash burgers and sodas Raymond consumes, this is art. No two levels here are the same, as Monolith throws just about every natural disaster scenario imaginable at the player. One level, you're outrunning lava in a volcano. In the next, you're chasing terrorists on the freeway.
This is Ray! I've been pursued by members of Surge! They've taken the Professor and Lisa! Do you read me? Son of a bitch!
There's also a fairly deep weapon and skill tree to participate in, a ton of unlockable costumes, levels, and even a secret ending. There is never a dull moment in Disaster, and you'll find a lot of things to love about it. It comes with my highest recommendation, but keep in mind, you'll need a modded Wii if you want to play this in America. Check out my video on it. Earthseeker, released in 2011 by Crafts and Meister. This was another great game that got left in Japan near the end of the Wii's life cycle. It was recently translated into English by Brand New Man, and you'll need a modded Wii if you want to play it. Earthseeker is a gorgeous game modeled closely after Phantasy Star Online and Monster Hunter. As a matter of fact, this was made by former Capcom employees that worked on Monster Hunter. In the game, you are an Earthseeker, essentially a grunt sent out by space colonizers to scavenge the remains of Earth, which were scattered across the planets after a fleet of spaceships crash-landed there. You assemble a team of tiny alcoholic guardians and accept missions from the Earthsiders Guild. Down below, you will be tasked with fighting off monsters in a semi-turn-based action RPG manner. This is where you'll use action points to execute your attacks. Enemies will then drop key items and materials which you can bring back to the base for mission objectives or for some crafting. The ultimate goal here is to find the lost artifacts from Earth, which you then bring back to HQ. All the artifacts you find will be displayed in this multi-tiered museum, which you can then check out. There are multiple characters, artifacts, missions, and levels to explore. I've only scratched the surface of Earthseeker, and I did not want to put it down when I played it for this video. If you enjoy Monster Hunter, I hope you'll seek this one out. Elebits, also known in Europe as LEDs, get it, was released by Konami in 2006. It's brought to you by the same team that made Dewy's Adventure, but it's much more enjoyable. The setup here is just another typical story about a young boy alone in his house when he discovers his father's unguarded gun. What could possibly go wrong? Elebits is all about the capture gun, which you control with the Wiimote in a first-person mode. The goal here is to find these tiny creatures called Elebits, which bear a resemblance to Pikmin. These little guys generate electricity, and you need to collect them all in order to restore the power to your house and your entire town. The watts generated will start to charge the appliances in the home, where many Elebits will stow away inside of. Most of the game centers around moving objects around in your house to uncover their hiding spots. The more Elebits you collect, the more watts you generate for the capture gun, which then upgrades it, allowing you to lift heavier objects to find more Elebits. Thankfully, the Wiimote-style controls work decently without too much waggling involved. You just point and shoot. Some of the best games on the platform stick to that format. It's a fairly relaxing game that gets rather addicting once you've settled in. Now, they do introduce some degree of challenge as the game progresses by placing breakable objects in the level, and if you break too many of them, it's game over. It's not the most complex game on the platform, but sometimes simplicity can be a good thing. It's a cute game that anyone can pick up and play, and it's got a banger soundtrack. Check it out. Escape from Bug Island, also known as Necronesia, was released by Spike in 2006. This is a very early Wii-era survival horror where you play as an incel named Ray, who accompanies this bug-obsessed lunatic Michelle on a mission to study large bugs on Bug Island. I am a fan of absurd titles, and I can't stop saying Bug Island out loud. Bug Island. Bug Island. As Ray, your goal is to uncover the secrets of Bug Island and rescue your missing friends. And thereafter, title card. Almost all the actions of this game are performed by waggling the Wiimote or nunchuck to attack or dodge out of the way of aforementioned bugs. The controls are a bit rough around the edges, but they aren't the worst when it comes to response. The combat really isn't too bad. The game is broken up into around 20 stages, and each of them have mini objectives like collecting X number of objects or defeating a certain amount of bugs. There's a surprising amount of variety when it comes to the type of weapons you can find, and gross squishy bugs to attack with said weapons. I beat this game when it first came out, and honestly, I can't tell you anything about the plot beyond I threw rocks at a giant zombie gorilla this one time, which was pretty cool. Granted, there are much better survival horror and bug-centric games on the platform, but there's just something about Escape from Bug Island that draws me back in. It's not good at all, but I still recommend it. Bug Island. released in 2009 under 3 different confusing names. It was known as Excitebike World Rally in North America, Excitebike World Race in Japan, and Excitebike World Challenge in PAL. This was a WiiWare exclusive reboot of the NES Classic that no one seems to talk about. At the time, Nintendo was trying really hard to bring this franchise back from the grave, as they also released Excite Truck and the underrated Excitebots as well. They didn't do much to advertise Excitebike World Rally, and I had no idea this existed before this video, and I'm sure this will come to some of you as a surprise. Listen, this is a no-frills, simple style racing game. The goal is to win the race by using the boost to make sick jumps and stick the landing to maintain your speed. However, you can't use too much of the boost, otherwise your engine will overheat. Of course, you have opponents that are also on the racetracks and obstacles to avoid too. The goal is to get the fastest time. What more could you really want out of an Excitebike game? Well, if you want extras, it's got them. There's new skins for your bike to unlock. There used to be an entire online multiplayer, which I would have loved to check out had I known about it at the time, and some unlockable skins were tied exclusively to that mode. Now they're lost to time. There also exists a rather robust series of maps to race and a basic ass track editor to mess around with. Nothing too special here. Regardless, Excitebike World Rally is excellent for what it's trying to do, and it recaptures the simple pick up and play nature of the 1985 original. Nintendo should definitely re-release this on the Switch, and it would be a simple port job. Nintendo, what are you doing? FlingSmash was put out by Artoon in 2010, and most people probably bought this because it was bundled with Wii Motion Plus. The gameplay is an odd mix of Breakout and a 2D side-scroller shoot-'em-up. You fling the Wiimote in a tennis-style fashion to volley zip into blocks, crystals, and enemies. You can also charge up zip to do a powerful volley, which is good for clearing out long rows of blocks. If I'm being honest, it's not the most entertaining game in solo mode, but when I was playing co-op mode with Kirk, we had some fun due to the chaotic block smashing factor introduced with 2 players at one time. Now the game does modify some of the elements by changing Zip's form to have new properties. Honestly, there's not a lot of substance to the game and it's not very interesting, but if you can still find the Wii Motion Plus bundle, it might be worth it. Regardless, it's a simple pick up and play game that you can enjoy with your kids without having to explain complex mechanics to them. They could just wildly flail around their arms and probably beat this game. Flip's Twisted World, released in 2010 by Frozen North Productions. This is one of those games that is not as cool as the premise makes it out to be. In a nutshell, it's a dollar store knockoff of Super Mario Galaxy, where you play as a young wizard in training named Flip, who gets the ability to flip the world around them. The flipping mechanic is used to climb platforms and solve puzzles. That's the big gimmick here. Now, I've seen many Wii hidden gem videos that recommend this for some some reason. They will point out how ambitious and clever Flip was despite its budget. And oh, did you know this was the last video game Tommy Tallarico composed before he pivoted into making pretend consoles for money?
If you're into games with blood and violence and sexual content and kids in sexual compromising positions and rape on the Nintendo, if that's what you want, then buy a Switch.
One odd thing I noticed about the game is that it's eerily quiet, and most of the atmosphere and monsters are missing sound effects. To be sure I wasn't going crazy, I turned down the music and just walked around the world. Outside of picking up coins, it's dead silent. They just used the music to cover this up, hoping that people wouldn't notice, but I noticed. This game has a sickening amount of screen tearing, despite not having much going on in the level. If you ever want to introduce somebody to what the concept of screen tearing is, just show them Flip. There is a cool boss fight where you have to flip the world to shake this salt on the slug boss in order to kill him, but that's about all this game has going for it. The controls are about as irresponsive as they come. Jumping is too floaty, and the only reason I'm including Flip in this video is to tell you to save your money for better games. Just save up and buy Mario Galaxy or something. It's your money, whatever. Even though this came from a Canadian developer, it has that lack of polish found in early ZX Spectrum Euro jank, and if that's what they were going for, job well done.
House of the Dead. Overkill.
The House of the Dead. Overkill was originally released as a Wii exclusive title by Sega in 2009, but it got later ports. This is by far one of the best on-rail shooters for the Wii, and a shining example of how you should handle a reboot of a franchise. You play as Agent G, or Detective Isaac Washington, who have to blast their way through chunky mobs of zombies in pursuit of the infamous Papa Caesar. It's a big nod to 1970s grindhouse horror movies with absurd dialogue, a grain filter over everything, cutscenes that just randomly skip around, and continuity errors galore. Anytime people try and convince me that the Wii was a console made for children or families, I try to remind them that this exists. This is a hard M-rated game, bordering on A in some places, especially near the ending.
Your symptoms? Cold sweats, irregular heartbeat, anxiety. The diagnosis? Bleeding horror that cuts like a scalpel to the heart. There is only one cure. A white-hot boot to the brain. Ballistic trauma. Collect your point-blank prescription.
It runs around 30 frames per second, but maintains it well for the most part. The lower frame rate works here, since the presentation is supposed to emulate film to match the rest of the grindhouse theme. There's not much to say in the gameplay department. What you see is what you get. You shoot the zombies, they explode, and then you reload. Sometimes there are golden brains to find in the levels. You shoot them and you unlock bonus stuff. What's interesting is that they added a weapon upgrading system between the levels. You can modify or purchase new weapons which will carry between the levels, which will help you earn a higher rank. For a linear rail shooter, there's a lot of meat on this bone, and you'll likely put in multiple playthroughs into it before you're done with it. If you got a friend with a good sense of humor, get them to play this with you. You'll be glad you did.
What the fuck?
I was listening to that.
You fucking think because you scored us this fucking popsicle ride, you can play that shit?
Hey. That there is country western's finest.
You are one fucked up fuck. You know that? That's offensive shit you're playing me.
You ever thought of therapy?
Ju-On the Grudge Haunted House Simulator was developed by Feel Plus and released in 2009. Fun fact, the game's director was Takashi Shimazu, who also wrote and directed both Ju-On films, so you can't accuse this adaptation of straying too far from the source. This is a first-person escape the room type horror game where you use the Wiimote as a flashlight to find keys and open doors. This is one of the slowest games on the system. I'm serious. Your character walks like they're trudging through molasses. You're on sort of a timer, as your flashlight battery determines how much time you have left before it's game over. But you can pick up more batteries in the level. The levels don't typically last more than 10 minutes on average, but they feel like an eternity, and that's not a good thing. Occasionally, a ghost will pop up and present you with a life or death waggling QTE to perform. The game was also measuring the player's movements of the Wiimote to determine their courage level. I'm still a bit confused about the method of data gathering, like what exactly is it reading or measuring here? Regardless, I guess it determined I had a high scare and sissy level. I'm not sure what the distinction is between those two labels, but it feels bad, man. I wish I could say there was more to this game, but it's disappointingly shallow and not worth the $200+ it typically goes for. I would only recommend the PAL version specifically for the box art where the lady is hiding behind the couch. Over in Europe, the game was called Ju-On the Grudge, a fright simulator. This begs the question, is it a fright simulator if it creates genuine fright? Shouldn't it be called a fright generator at that point? Avoid at all costs. Kirby's Epic Yarn, released in 2010 by HAL and the aptly named Good Feel. This kicked off a brand new genre of the 2D craft former, which still lives on in the Yarn Yoshi series. Kirby is turned into string by a wizard named Yin Yarn, who casts some sort of evil craft spell on Dreamland. Kirby's then warped to a strange world made up of arts and crafts called Patchland. This game was unique because it didn't feature Kirby's signature copy ability. Instead, it's replaced with a yarn whipping attack, which is used to loosen enemies until they poof into craft materials. Even though the copy ability is missing, Kirby will still turn into several different objects throughout the game, like his classic UFO form. Now, if you're playing in co-op, the second player will assume the role of Prince Fluff, the ruler of Patchland. They're pretty much identical in terms of their movesets, but you can use each other for platforms, which does come in handy when you're trying to go for all the hidden objects within the level. The goal of each level is to make it to the end of it, whilst making sure to collect all the beads and find hidden objects and songs. There's no health bar this time around, and you can't die. Instead, there's a Sonic the Hedgehog impact thingy, where if Kirby gets hit, beads fly out of him, and then you have to retrieve them if you want to go for a higher rank. Your rank is determined based on how many beads you collect throughout the level. Now, don't misconstrue this game for being too easy. If you're aiming for 100% completion, you'll have to play most of the game without taking too many hits. The coolest bit of the game involves Kirby and Fluff becoming apartment decorators. There are these stickers that you find inside of levels that can be placed inside the apartments. If you place the missing stickers, this attracts tenants to the apartment, and these tenants will dish out challenge levels, which you can then do to earn you extra beads, which you can spend in the shop in the town to spend on more stickers. One thing I appreciate the most about the Kirby series is how it always manages to reinvent itself in a radical new direction with each new game, but is still able to maintain the general Kirbiness about it at the same time. This is an experience that both older and younger players could appreciate, and the unique arts and crafts style is kind of timeless. This is an essential title for every Wii owner, and if you like 2D platformers, you cannot do much better than this. The last story was brought to you by Lost Odyssey's Mistwalker Studios in 2011. The West almost missed out on one of the best JRPGs on the platform, but thankfully a groundswell of passionate gamers flooded Nintendo with letters, emails, and videos begging for its localization. The campaign was ultimately a success, as the last story, Pandora's Tower, and Xenoblade Chronicles received worldwide release. Though Nintendo would never directly credit Operation Rainfall as the deciding factor, the movement made waves with the right people, and here we are. The last story is about a band of mercenaries that take on contracts in the castle city of Lazulis. One day, the gang is seeking out a bounty for a client when they get ambushed by a mob of undying skeleton knights. Zale, our pretty boy protagonist, gains a mysterious power which can raise fallen allies and defeat the evil forces once and for all. What I love most about the last story was how it managed to strike a perfect balance between tactical and action-based combat. Before any major fight, the mercs will strategize a plan before rushing into battle. The player gets an overhead perspective of the field and all the enemies on it. This is useful for taking out pesky healers to prevent the enemies from regrouping, or you can use it to set up environmental traps. The combat here provides a lot of dynamic choices. You can snipe enemies or environmental traps from afar using Zale's crossbow, or you have the option of flanking the enemies by sneaking around cover walls, and then jumping in for a critical strike. Zale is also the game's field medic. When an ally falls, Zale will have to dash across the field and tag them to bring them back into the fight. I can't stress how enjoyable the whole experience is when it finally clicks with you. This is an RPG that doesn't bog you down with too many cutscenes or dialogue, and the mercenaries will just carry out their conversations in the heat of battle. It blends storytelling with the action of the moment seamlessly. There are occasions where things do slow down and the mercs will kick back at the pub for some good old character development, and I love these moments too.
Wow, Seren. This must be record time.
What, you think I'm drunk? Look, I'm as sober as whatever's normally sober. Anyway, get some alcohol in ya.
I'm a bit lost here.
I should also mention the city of Lazulis is breathtaking, with the caveat for a Wii game. It's a bit on the bloomy side, but it's brimming with life and activity. Walking around the city, you'll find plenty of hidden objects that'll upgrade your party stats, there's side missions to take on, and an awesome battle arena to participate in to earn a little dough. Last story is rather short for a JRPG, clocking in at around 30 hours if you choose to do all the side missions, and a little less if you just focus on the main story. Thankfully, there's not too much grinding in the game, as each battle and map are hand-tailored to keep the game about surviving by strategy rather than repetitive battles. A lot of careful consideration was placed into keeping a tight pace, and that's something I appreciate as someone who loves RPGs, but often struggles with finding the time to complete them. By the way, there's also a co-op and competitive multiplayer mode to check out, but you'll need homebrew to restore it. I'll leave a link to a guide down below if you're interested. The last story is my personal favorite RPG on the system, and it desperately needs a port to modern systems. Let's Tap, put out by Sega in 2009. Originally, this game was bundled with a special box that you use to put the Wiimote on, but mine didn't come with one, so I'm just using this pizza box. Let's Tap is an interesting experiment where the player places the Wiimote face down on a box and then uses their fingers to tap the surface of the box. There's nothing quite like this experience on the platform, and I kind of understand why no other games carried on this control scheme. The Wiimote is rather sensitive to tapping inputs. It'll read light taps and hard taps to determine the kind of input you're trying to deliver, but not always accurately. In Let's Tap, there are several mini games or art experiments to try out. There's this racing game where you have to light tap to jog or hard tap to jump. Now, the tap controls function well for the most part, but you have to be very gentle with your taps because it will often misread your tap, causing you to randomly jump. One thing I encountered frequently was the Wiimote would gradually slide off of the box, and then I would have to stop what I was doing, pick up the Wiimote, and recenter it on the box. I suggest doing that between levels. Despite the occasional hiccup, I was still kind of impressed by how fun some of the tapping games were, especially the taiko drum-inspired rhythm game, and there were some other demo-style levels where you just tap a whole bunch and explosions and fireworks happen. Kind of cool, but I think beyond the race and rhythm section, they didn't have a whole lot to work with, and it's ultimately a shallow experiment. The game does support up to 4 players, so throw a pizza party and save the boxes. In 2007, Nintendo created a Wiimote accessory called the Wii Zapper, which was an homage to the NES Zapper. This hunk of plastic held both the Wiimote on the barrel and the nunchuck on the stock. The Zapper was bundled with the pack-in title The Legend of Zelda: Link's Crossbow Training. Now, when I call it a pack-in title, it's not a knock against the quality of the game. There was actually quite a lot of deliberation behind this little game, as Shigeru Miyamoto wanted to make a side story in the world of Twilight Princess with a simpler design, meant for quicker play sessions. Still, he kept running into conflicts with the development team, who wanted to force in a grand scale storyline to it, but Miyamoto eventually got the team to scale down their ideas to just a simple shooting gallery style game with no story elements whatsoever. Rumor has it, they were originally going to give Link an actual gun to shoot, and the justification for the gun, it was going to involve a time travel plot where Link ends up in the future and was fully armed with an arsenal of guns, but that idea was shot down in a manner of speaking. So what's the end game like? Well, it's exactly what's on the tin: Link's Crossbow Training. This is a first-person shooting gallery score attack sort of game with a focus on maintaining your combo meter, getting bullseyes, hitting golden targets for more points, and destroying random objects which will yield bonus points. You can do rapid fire style shots, you can zoom into the target for more accurate shots, or you can charge up your bow and deliver explosive rounds, which is kind of like an area of effect for multiple targets. If you earn a high enough score, you can unlock the next level. The levels only last around 3 minutes, which is short enough so the player would be willing to try again if they fail. There are 3 different types of levels: the aforementioned shooting gallery target levels, then there's a defender mode where you're up against mobs of enemies, and then there's the most awkward mode, Ranger, which puts Link in a third-person perspective where you move him around the maps to shoot the enemies. And it makes you come to a dead stop so you can then aim and fire at the enemies. Just not a fan of this one. The best thing I can say is that the game doesn't overstay its welcome. There's only 9 levels to unlock, but that's exactly what it needed to be for this concept. All in all, I just wish Nintendo would revive the lost art of the pack-in title. You just don't see too many things like this anymore. Co-developed by Sing and Town Factory in 2009, Little King's Story is a game that belongs to the extended Lovedelic universe. It was born from the crazy mind of creator Yoshiro Kimura and loosely based on the story The Little Prince. Little King's Story is about as creative as they come on this platform. It's about a young boy who discovers a magical crown which makes him a little king. With the crown, the little king is able to issue orders to his loyal subjects, who will then help him build up his kingdom and expand his dominion over the land. This is an excellent rags to riches style of game, which starts you off in a dumpy little shack and a few loyal subjects to order around. But that will soon change. Your influence will grow after taking on missions and bringing back home bountiful riches, which are used to improve the town. The game occupies a rather nice space between the town improvement system of Animal Crossing and the troop management found in Pikmin. As the king, you recruit loyal subjects to take with you on your journey, which typically involves clearing out an area of monsters or building pathways to reach other parts of the map. You can assign these carefree adults to job classes like farmers, knights, carpenters, just to name a few. You take your crew out with you on missions and direct their movements from afar while you dodge out of the way of attacks, and you regroup your troops to go in for another attack on enemies. As you complete the missions, you earn more money and town improvement projects, which will help you attract more loyal subjects to grow your military might. The game eventually has the Little King challenging other kingdoms for dominancy. It's lighthearted and packed with the eccentric characters you've come to expect from Kimura. Little King's Story is a delightful experience with a surprising amount of depth beneath the children's storybook surface. I plan on talking about it a lot more in the future, but for now, it comes with my highest recommendation. We've reached what we call in the YouTube business the mid-roll. This is where people would place an ad, this is where you go get a drink, maybe a snack, take a leak. It's a long one. This is a long one. I'm not gonna ask anything of you. I'm just gonna clap. Thank you. Thanks for watching this far. Hang in there. That's tenacity, and I'm proud of you. Lost in Shadow was released in North America by Hudson Soft in 2011. I've already covered this in a retrospective on my channel, so I'll be brief. This is a unique two-dimensional platformer where you play as a young boy who was turned into a shadow. The goal is to make it to the top of this tower so the boy can get his body back. As a shadow, he's very limited. He can only traverse the shadow platforms in the background. So occasionally, you'll need to adjust objects in the foreground or the three-dimensional space, or shift sources of light to bend the shadows so he can reach new areas. There comes a point later on in the game where the boy can temporarily take the form of light to explore the 3D space as well. I truly enjoy the soundtrack on this one. Indie artist Gudevol composed the title song, and it's a total earworm. The atmosphere is rather lonely as there's no other characters to interact with and the most minimal story possible behind this. Lost in Shadow is all about getting lost in the atmosphere, and it has a lot to speak of. Now it is a bit on the short side, clocking in at about 15 hours, but I feel it ends right before the premise wears thin. If you want to know more about the game, check out my video. Lost Winds was a WiiWare exclusive title released by esteemed developer Frontier Developments, who were responsible for Dog's Life. For some reason, my legit copy of Lost Winds has some texture flickering issues on the Wii U, but the sequel doesn't seem to have that problem, so outside of that, the game is quite beautiful, so don't let my technical issues turn you off from it. In Lost Winds, you control the protagonist Toku with the analog stick on the nunchuck. The Wiimote here is used to draw lines to control the direction of the wind, which will help Toku reach new platforms or perform actions to clear a pathway. It's somewhat of a Metroidvania series where you unlock new wind powers, which you can then use to take back to visited areas and find new pathways. The story is not anything groundbreaking, it's just another good guy earns a power to fight an ancient evil. The story is mostly just used to prop up the gameplay. That's fine, I didn't expect anything more. The presentation is rich and vibrant, some of the best color usage on the Wii. Keep in mind, Lost Winds will take you only around 3 hours to beat, and if you have fun with it, well, I have good news. The sequel is more of the same with a winner setting this time around. You guys know I'm a fan of low-budget games released at low-budget prices, and Lost Winds was only $10 when it released, and for that price, you get a lot of bang for your buck. There's a lot of heart behind this one, and I wish they would find some way to bring this back on modern platforms.
Mad World.
Mad World was released by Sega in 2009. This title has the honor of being the first game released by Platinum Games. Mad World is about a Running Man style competition called Death Watch, where contestants kill one another to earn a high score. Of course, all of this is presented with an ink pen comic fashion, Frank Miller style, with two chucklehead commentators riffing on the whole ordeal. It's literally one of the best action games I've ever played. Now, I have a full retrospective on Mad World on my channel if you want to dive deeper, but in that video, I did neglect to mention the multiplayer component. Let's correct that. The multiplayer is a split-screen versus mode, where you face off in mini-games from the single-player campaign. What can I say, it's a bit lazy, considering they're the exact same mini-games, but they do provide an opportunity for the player to practice in some of these games like Money Shot, where you have to shake up a bottle and shove it down an NPC's throat to launch them into these erotic billboards. It's not as easy as it looks. Mad World has one of the best OSTs on the Wii, and by extension, the entire history of video games. You'll be rapping along as you formulate creative new ways to kill the things in front of you. Sadly, at the time of this video, this is still a Wii exclusive, and one of the greatest reasons to still own one in the current year.
That's a mighty fine feeling, Jack. Just like Mama used to do. Sounds like you grew up in a fucked up family. You never met my mama.
From the creator of Parappa the Rapper comes a total disaster of a game known as Major Minor's Majestic March. On its surface, it still has that bright and colorful character design by artist Rodney Greenblatt, who worked on the Parappa series. That's about the nicest thing I can say about it. The concept is centered around being the leader of a marching band, and you use the Wiimote as a baton to keep the tempo and recruit more members of the band during your march. The problem is the Wiimote does not pick up your motions accurately, sometimes failing to register gestures during the march. You're gonna quickly lose your tempo and stumble your way towards failure, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Up, down,
Keep on swinging now. Up, down, down. Seems that you don't quite have it down yet.
I truly gave this one a genuine try, and over time, I did start to get used to the awkward inputs. I doubt your average Wii player would have the patience for this. Reviewers tore it apart, citing the broken controls holding back an otherwise interesting premise, and I couldn't agree more. I expected so much more from Nana Ansha, as historically they've made some excellent rhythm games that stood the test of time. And had they just waited just a few more months for Wii Motion Plus to release, they might have been able to correct the sloppy input issues. But sadly, Major Minor could not channel the charm of the rapping dog or jamming lamb to come before him. If you can pick this game up for cheap, it's worth a look for curiosity's sake, but there are much better rhythm games on the system. You could probably just stand around in your living room alone shaking your Wiimote and have a better time. I know I did. Marble Saga Kororinpa was released in 2009 by Hudson Soft. This is a tilt-based marble platformer with a lot of personality. There are two of these games on the Wii, but this one is the better of the two. Essentially, you pick your marble and navigate through stages by twisting the Wiimote to tilt the stage, and then the ball moves and you collect crystals. Collecting crystals will unlock the goal. Then you just put the marble in the hole. What more is there to say? The real fun comes from trying to find the stage's hidden green gems, which will help you unlock new marbles. Now, most of these marbles are modeled after cute animals, which will make these little sounds when you roll them. This is what it's all about, folks. This game features a pretty fun stage editor, and you can unlock different parts for it in the main game. It's a straightforward experience that requires a little bit of skill to get all the gold medals. Another odd fact is you can use the Wii balance board to control the marble if you want to do that, but I didn't. Check it out if you enjoy the Monkey Ball series. 2009's Muramasa the Demon Blade was made by George Kamatani's Vanillaware. They are a studio with a small team of under 30 members known for long gaps between game releases to ensure that they give the players a quality title that will last the ages. That description also applies here to Muramasa. It's timelessly beautiful. Muramasa is a straightforward 2D action beat-em-up with light RPG elements tucked away in there. No Wii motion gimmicks, just high precision control and straight up great feeling action. You get to choose between two protagonists who have their own fully developed story and different boss fights, and if you complete both of their campaigns, it will unlock 3 additional endings apiece. You jump and slash your way through luscious environments on the path to fight the game's humongous bosses, all of which were based upon Japanese mythological figures. I cannot stress how satisfying the combat is in Muramasa. Stringing together combos in a crazy Devil May Cry manner and then quickly switching out your blade mid-combo to deliver punishing strikes is exhilarating. This is a very hard game to put down, and it never feels dull due to each campaign only running around 10 hours apiece. You can beat this game in a weekend, but just make sure you're taking breaks. I should also mention, if you love Muramasa, it eventually did get a port years later on the PlayStation PlayStation Vita called Muramasa Rebirth, which has 4 additional story campaigns to go through in the Genroku Legends DLC. Now, wherever you play Muramasa, you're guaranteed to be playing one of the highest quality games on its respective platform. This game, and by extension all of Vanillaware's games, are highly underrated, and if you own a Wii, you need to have this. Muscle March was released worldwide in 2010 as a WiiWare exclusive title. Now, this is the kind of game that defies explanation, but please let me explain. First, you pick out your muscly gym bro or polar bro to play as. When the level starts, they get ambushed for their precious protein powder. And then the chase is on. The supplement assailant will start Looney Tunes dashing through the level and punching out holes in the wall in the shape of their body. Well, that protein ain't gonna save itself. As the player, you have to watch the Way Bandit as they strike a pose just before hitting the wall. You then need to match the pose by moving the Wiimote and nunchuck to then clear the wall without hitting it. Essentially, you raise and lower the Wiimote and nunchuck in accordance with the pose that you see on the screen. The game is just non-stop fast and frenetic and gets more ridiculous with each subsequent stage. Other members of your Muscle March will start to drop off as the stage goes on, and the thief will start quickly changing up their poses to trick you. When you're closing in on the thief, you'll have to waggle like crazy to land that tackle and get back that protein. This just defies rational explanation. How did this get localized with no issue, but people had to beg for games like Xenoblade Chronicles? Must have flew right under Reggie's radar, or perhaps his body was ready for the Muscle March. And yours will be too. This is an excellent party game. Check it out.
No More Heroes. Desperate Struggle.
No More Heroes 2, Desperate Struggle, was released in 2010 by Grasshopper Manufacture. You might know the series as those lightsaber games by that dude with numbers in his name. Fair enough. You play as the otaku assassin Travis Touchdown on a quest to avenge his best bud, Bishop. Once again, Travis will be returning to the Garden of Madness to slay leagues of faceless grunts and assassins to reach the big boss who ordered the hit. There are many aspects to No More Heroes 2 that I prefer over the original. For one, they got rid of having to drive all over the town of Santa Destroy to do the missions. You just pick what you want to do and you warp there and then get to doing it. It's a game that cuts straight to the point. Along the way, Travis will have to take on side jobs to earn enough money to unlock the next rank match. Most of them are retro-themed, harkening back to the NES Famicom era. He even blows on the cartridges, it's kinda cool. These side jobs feel right at home on the Nintendo Wii. Travis can also acquire multiple beam katanas this time around, which you can then swap on the fly and carry on the fight. The peony is my favorite. It's an absurdly large lightsaber that gets more erect with each successful strike, which is kinda useful for clearing out entire mobs with relative ease. Use the Schwartz. The game also features a few different characters to play as and a mecha to control for a certain level. All the changes add some nice variety to a game that can get rather repetitive at times. Now, if you're looking for a wild series that is equal parts action and comedy, look no further than No More Heroes. This has now been ported to everything. Check it out.
You're nowhere close to master. Get cooking!
Opoona was developed by Koei Tecmo and released in Japan on the same day as Super Mario Galaxy in 2007. Its launch went as well as the Space Shuttle Challenger, to say the least. It's a quirky, oddball RPG about a family of astronauts that have floating objects over their heads called bonbons. They are separated after their ship crash lands on a planet called Landroll. You play as the titular Opoona, an alopecia-stricken adolescent on a mission to reunite his family by becoming a ranger at the Star House Academy. As a ranger in training, Opoona will have to take on missions to survey the planet, slay the monsters, and bring home materials to raise his rank. The game is wrapped in the red tape of bureaucracy, and you'll need a license before you can move on. The combat is centered around throwing Opoona's bonbon at the enemies and then waiting for it to come back to him so he can then throw it again. It's all about the momentum here. You charge the bonbon by pulling back on the control stick and then releasing it, which will determine the power and speed of the throw. Opoona is filled with a ton of content, as you can upgrade your weapons, earn new licenses to unlock more features, but for whatever reason, I just could not get Opoona to click with me. Primarily because it's littered with rooms and areas to get lost in, and you'll just be wandering around aimlessly so you can eventually stumble upon the one dialogue flag you need to trigger so you can get the next mission going. I've dumped a stupid amount of time just trying to find the NPCs I needed to talk to get this bonbon rolling. Me getting lost could be chalked up to a bad translation, and I've been told the English localization was somewhat filled with spelling and grammatical errors, which could then lead the player to making the wrong choices in certain dialogue trees, or discerning the wrong clue from a piece of text. Fortunately, there does now exist a patch to correct those issues. You can apply the Opoona Project's relocalization patch if you have Revolution installed. Maybe next time I'll give Opoona another shot with that patch and maybe I'll have a better time. Pandora's Tower was a part of Operation Rainfall's campaign to bring Japanese games west, and I am so thankful it got a Western release. Pandora's Tower is one of the most experimental takes on the Metroidvania genre I've ever played. It has a similar story to Shadow of the Colossus, where you play as a young warrior, Aaron, who is hoping to cure his beloved Elena by venturing out to a forbidden land. The duo takes shelter in this abandoned observatory that overlooks 13 towers, all of which are connected by these massive chains. Time is of the essence, as Elena is gradually being overtaken by the disease, which afflicts her with oozing blemishes that would even make David Cronenberg squeamish. Aaron will have to venture out to each of the towers to quite literally rip the flesh off demons with a chain hook. The big gimmick here is the tension-based combat system, where you have to launch a hook into a demon and then retract it back to build up tension to maximize the damage and rip off huge chunks of flesh to then bring back to Elena in the observatory so she can apprehensively consume it to stave off the curse a little longer. Feeding Elena the demon flesh resets the timer so you can get back to adventuring, but if you're not quick enough, she's gonna grow some nasty tentacles. As the game progresses, you'll open up shortcuts in the towers, which allow you to pick up where you left off. You'll also be able to deepen your relationship with Elena by checking in on her and giving her gifts. Your bond with her will extend the timer a little bit longer. The ultimate goal here is to obtain all the Master Flesh from the game's bosses, which are located at the top of each tower. Now the game starts off a bit frustrating since you don't have much time to explore the towers before Elena needs to be fed, but it gradually gets more manageable as you complete the towers and build your relationship up with Elena. There's also a Diablo-style equipment management system and plenty of crafting to tide over Super RPG enthusiasts. What can I say? I find Pandora's Tower to be captivating, if not surreal at times. In an odd way, all this demon meat gathering does build some weird relationship with Elena, and you really do sympathize with her. If you're looking for a really dark 3D Castlevania style game, Pandora's Tower is the best you're gonna get on the Wii. Punch-Out!, developed by Next Level Games, who brought you the Super Mario Striker series, was released to critical praise in 2009. And let me tell you, this is one of the best remakes that Nintendo has ever produced. In the game, you play as Rocky's stand-in, Little Mac, a manlet with big dreams. With the assistance of his coach, Doc Lewis, he trains and fights his way through larger-than-life foes all across the world on the road to becoming the world champion. The game is fairly minimal on the story, but heavy on the montage, and I'm still happy that Little Mac has his pink jumper for when he's training. All the tributes to the NES original were paid in the right places. So Punch-Out! Is a boxing game all about pattern memorization. Your opponent will often telegraph their attacks, and Little Mac has to dodge in response and then go in for a strike whenever the opportunity presents itself. If you hit at the right window, Little Mac can earn a star, which powers up his special attack, the Star Punch. Knowing when to use the Star Punch is also another strategy to delivering an instant knockout punch. The game has a few different control styles. You can just play it with the Wiimote in horizontal mode and just use buttons. You can use the Wiimote nunchuck and then use the motion controls to deliver high or low punches. This is one game where I don't mind the motion controls. They really do enhance the immersion of the moment, and they're very responsive. I've beaten the entire game with the motion controls. Everything about this game just clicks with me. The characters are charming. I love the stories told through still frames that we get before each fight, so we get a general sense of what kind of opponent we're dealing with. I love that there's a secret chocolate bar button. Doc Lewis will take a bite out of his chocolate bar and it'll restore Little Mac's health for some reason. I don't even mind when the fights drag out a little longer because you get to see the battle damage that forms on the opponent and on Little Mac. They get all these bandages and big goose eggs all over their face and start losing teeth. There was also a Club Nintendo exclusive WiiWare Punch-Out! Prequel called Doc Lewis's Punch-Out! This takes place right before the game, where Little Mac and Doc Lewis are sparring before the big title fights. It starts off like a good primer for the game, but it gradually turns into one of the hardest fights throughout the Punch-Out! Series. Doc Lewis doesn't mess around, and I swear, if you can beat Doc Lewis, the actual game itself is gonna be a cakewalk. Sadly, this was never released commercially, so if you want to play this in the modern day, you're gonna have to pirate it. Next Level Games is a third-party Nintendo developer that not many people know about, which is a shame because they take dead Nintendo franchises and give them new life and sometimes end up surpassing the original IP in terms of fun. If you enjoyed the boxing game within Wii Sports, then you're gonna absolutely love Punch-Out! I would rank this in the top 5 Wii games.
Resident Evil 4.
Resident Evil 4 Wii Edition. What else could be said about RE4? It's one of the most available games of all time. Resident Evil 4 Wii Edition is one of 11 ports of the GameCube original, but I consider it to be the best of the bunch. Resident Evil 4 Wii Edition contains all the extras of the PS2 version, like the Ada campaigns and weapons, but now presented in a widescreen mode with the addition of Wii controls. And those controls make all the difference here. The aiming is great, really great. Instead of aiming with a laser sight like in the original, you now have a large target reticle which helps you place your shots more accurately by aiming the Wiimote at the target. You can now quickly switch to your combat knife with a quick button press and a swing of the Wiimote, making it a seamless transition. They've also gone ahead and simplified QTEs to just waggling wildly, but the gestures match the scene well and enhance the immersion of the moment. Granted, this isn't an HD version of the game, but I'm willing to sacrifice some graphics and visual quality for much better controls. Sadly, the motion control aiming did not carry over to the Nintendo Switch port of the game and was left on the Wii. If you haven't experienced RE4 this way, I would highly recommend checking it out before hopping into the remake. Resident Evil: The Umbrella Chronicles, put out by Capcom and Kavia in 2007. The wraparound story is that Albert Wesker is looking through all the files, the Umbrella Chronicles, which are abridged versions of the events from 3 different Resident Evil games. In this one, it's Resident Evil 0, the original Resident Evil, and Resident Evil 3. And then there's some interim levels where you play as Wesker and it shows all of his meddlings within the plot. My problem is the game is front-loaded with the worst levels first, and you have to complete them if you want to get to the good stuff. The first Umbrella Chronicles take place in Resident Evil 0, and you get to choose between Rebecca or Billy. You have an unlimited handgun, which you can use to dispatch all the foes in front of you. Each enemy has their own weak point, and whenever the cursor starts blinking, you can shoot them for a critical strike, sometimes one-shotting enemies. You can also pick up other weapons in the level which have limited ammo. Generally speaking, you want to save them whenever you're in a tight spot or for a boss fight. You can also come across grenades, which are nifty for clearing out a room. The game also does incorporate the combat knife in the most annoying manner possible. Essentially, there's a whole bunch of slugs that will jump onto the screen, and then the player has to hold the combat knife button and waggle the zapper to clear all the slugs off the screen. This happens so many times during the Zero campaign when all you want to do is press forward. The game does start off promising, but as you push forward, the enemies start to become bullet sponges, and that's especially true when we're talking some of the later boss fights. Even on the easiest modes, some of the enemy life bars get ridiculously long and your guns become marshmallow shooters because Kavia insisted the player earn stars which are cashed in to upgrade the guns. And if you're not upgrading your guns, the boss fights are gonna last an eternity. I'm not kidding, the final fight of the Resident Evil 0 campaign is so annoying. You gotta shoot this bioweapon in the mouth, which will push him back towards this light. And when he's in the light, he's vulnerable. I keep landing critical shot after critical shot, but sometimes the boss will just refuse to move. I spent over 12 minutes on this fight alone, just pelting him with handgun bullets. This was my first time through, so all my guns were shit. I also encountered this frustration of the bullet sponge bosses once I reached the big big snake boss in Resident Evil 1. Your handgun alone is not enough to handle this fight. You're gonna blow through your first aid spray and all the herbs on the field, and maybe have to use a continue if you want to beat this without grinding. Now, some people might not mind grinding to get better weapons, but in my opinion, that kind of misses the point of an on-rail shooter. You want something that's quick and fun to play in small doses, and not have to constantly repeat the levels, trying to pick up split-second items, or aim for 100% accuracy to raise your star rank so you can get a weapon that's powerful enough to take on the game's many bosses. Umbrella Chronicles is a high-quality game that hits all the key points of the original series, but I think trying to reinvent the light gun shooting wheel was a bit short-sighted. If you're okay with a little bit of grinding in your shooting, then I'd still recommend it.
What is that thing?
Here it comes!
Silent Hill Shattered Memories was developed by Climax Studios and published by Konami in 2009. It was also released on the PSP and PS2, but I consider the Wii version to be the best of the bunch. Now, I've brought up Shattered Memories time and time again on my channel, so I'll be brief. Shattered Memories is a reimagining of the original Silent Hill with a unique atmosphere catering gimmick known as the psychology system. The game somewhat builds a profile on the player, based on responses you give Dr. Kaufman in the psychotherapy sections of the game, or it measures the actions taken by the game's protagonist, Harry Mason, during the exploration segments.
Gotta find Cheryl.
Using this profile on the player, the game will change up bits of the environment to match the profile. The system will change the appearances of characters, the raw shock enemies, open different areas to explore, and it dynamically alters the storyline as you go.
Mr. Mason.
Shit.
A reported disturbance came through on dispatch. The address rang a bell.
Yes, there's been a disturbance. There are people in my house. I think they have my daughter.
There's a larger emphasis on exploration, focusing on the little details of the world. The Wiimote doubles as Harry's flashlight, as well as being used as a speaker for his cell phone. Any phone number you come across in the game can be called, which leads to some interesting voicemails.
Silent Hill Police Station, Desk Sergeant Thompson. How can we help?
My daughter is missing.
Okay, sir. Can you give me your name?
Harry Mason.
Okay. Mr. Mason. Whereabouts are you calling from?
Why?
It's okay, Mr. Mason. Remain calm. I just want to send someone out to help you.
No.
A lot of Silent Hill fans took umbrage with the raw shock chase sequences, citing they were too difficult or easy to get lost. I disagree. For one, Harry can pull out his phone and get an entire map of the area, so there is an opportunity to route your pathway at any time. The raw shocks are also fairly easy to avoid. You can just point your flashlight in a direction, which will start blinking, or his radio will get crazy if there's one nearby. You can also peek through each doorway to make sure that the room is empty before you run through it. You can also hide in objects and just wait for them to pass by. If you do manage to get caught, you have the option of running away and dropping obstacles in their pathway to slow them down. If they grab you, all you have to do is center the Wiimote nunchuck against your body and calmly perform the gesture to throw them off. Now, if all else fails, you can just bust out an emergency flare to clear the raw shocks from the room around you. If you suck at this game, well, it's not the developer's fault. You chose to ignore the 7 survival techniques in your belt. Climax put a lot of work into the Wii version of Shattered Memories, and it shows. The game runs at a stable 60 frames. The controls here are fluid and work rather well to immerse the player in the environment. I think out of all the Western developed entries in the Silent Hill franchise, this is the most interesting of the bunch, and something I return to often. Try it out, learn the controls, and you're gonna have a great time.
Cheryl?
Daddy? Daddy?
Sweetie, you're okay? Are you at home? Sweetie, wait there. Wait for me.
You have to run, Daddy. You can't fight them. Run!
What? Is somebody with you? Cheryl! I'm coming to get you! Damn it!
Sin and Punishment Star Successor, released by Treasure in 2009. Sin and Punishment is the Star Successor to the Nintendo 64 original, which used to be a Japanese exclusive, but Nintendo released it on their Virtual Console. This is a direct sequel to the original, and I don't want to explain in what ways it is without getting into spoiler territory, but let's just say you pick one of two kids who have to defeat all of these guardians who are essentially wiping out all the remnants of Earth in order to build a new Earth. Nobody plays Sin and Punishment for the storyline anyways. It's all about the over-the-top, on-rails shooting action, and it's the greatest on the platform. It's kind of a blend between Star Fox and Panzer Dragoon. Your character moves independent of the target reticle, so you want to have something with twin sticks on it like the classic controller if you want to have the most precise controls. You're responsible for dodging out of the way of enemy projectiles by dashing with your character, while at the same time constantly shooting whatever's on the screen. You can do target locks, which will charge up your weapon and unleash massive damage to a single enemy, or you can lock onto multiple enemies and destroy waves of them to increase your combat multiplier. Probably the most unique feature here is the parrying mechanic. When enemies fire projectiles at you, you can mash the melee button and your character will kick and punch projectiles back to the enemy to deliver massive damage, and it also earns you some medals for doing so. You can make it through most of this game by just volleying back all the enemies' projectiles at them, but just make sure you're targeting the enemies when you're volleying back their projectiles. It's kind of easy to forget that you're supposed to be aiming in the middle of all this chaos. You'll understand what I mean once you play it. It forces you to learn the dodge and parrying mechanics, otherwise you're never going to make it beyond the game's first boss. This is what we call a casual filter. But if you make it past the first stage, the controls will become second nature, and it becomes a ton of fun. They never let up on the action. There's a ton of stuff to shoot and higher scores to achieve. I don't think there's a better on-rails third-person shooter on the system. If you want a Star Fox game that Nintendo never released, then get this. Super Smash Bros. Universe is a mod for Smash Bros. Brawl. The mod's life started as Project M back in 2012, but 10 years later, it's still going strong as a community effort that's constantly being updated with loads of new content. I'm having difficulty jotting down all the content that's been added. It's too much to cover in one video, but here are some highlights. Modders have added over 200 characters on top of the initial 35 base characters. Since this is a mod, you can customize the roster by adding or removing whoever you want. I just downloaded the biggest pack of characters and stages I could find and tried to run it for this video, which presented me with this monstrosity of a choose your character screen. If you add this many characters, you gotta expect it to lag a little bit when you're hovering over the characters. Not only do you have the options you see in front of you, but keep in mind, some alt costumes are entirely separate characters. Now the quality and effort put into characters in terms of design and movesets vary greatly. Some are original characters that have been designed from the ground up, which feature original animations, moves, stages, music, and final smashes. For example, Geno from the Super Mario RPG series was one of the most demanded characters in Smash polls, but Nintendo just refused to put him in the game. Same goes for Isaac from Golden Sun, who was demoted promoted to an assist trophy. What can I say? Modders do what Nintendo don't. Of course, I have to spotlight the inclusion of Ronald McDonald, who was based on the bizarre Japanese McDonald's commercials, and his moveset was oddly inspired by his appearance in Ronald's Treasure Island for the Sega Genesis, which gives him sparkle attacks. They really reached deep for some of these references. They also backported some Smash Ultimate characters like Joker from Persona 5. It's not a one-to-one recreation, but damn impressive nonetheless. The game is just overwhelming to play from the abundance of choice. I'm getting real Mugen vibes here, and that's a good thing in my book. This mod is one of the most ambitious, if not the most ambitious mods you will find on this platform. There's so much going on here that it's often prone to crashing, and I'm gonna spare you the death screeching your Wii will make when it does crash. Bugs aside, I think any Smash fan owes it to themselves to look into the Smash Universe mod. There's quite literally something for everyone in this project.
The winner is
Super Mario Starshine, a mod for Super Mario Galaxy 2 released in 2022. Keep in mind, this is still just in its demo form and not a complete experience, but the sheer amount of work and detail put into this mod is why I'm featuring it. So what is Super Mario Starshine? Well, it's Super Mario Galaxy 2 themed around levels from the GameCube Super Mario Sunshine, only it has the physics and gameplay elements from Super Mario Galaxy 2 without the use of the flood. Think of it as a fan service themed galaxy that Mario would visit during his journey, more so than a full-on game. That's not to say this demo is lacking content by any stretch, because there's over 20 shine sprites to find. It's just nice to return to the Delfino Plaza and see what everyone's up to. The dialogue is very self-aware, and some of the bugs haven't been ironed out yet, but that's fine. It's just a free demo. Lower your expectations and you'll be okay. There's only one playable level, the Bianco Hills, which is modeled rather faithfully after the original, with some substitutions in place to make more sense in the world of Mario Galaxy. You're not going to be fighting Petey Piranha at the top of the tower, but there is a neat stand-in to fight. Mostly you're going to be uncovering all the mysteries inside the plaza, where the majority of the shines are to be found. They included all the Mario Galaxy 2 powers, you can ride Yoshi, and you can even swap out with Luigi if you want to. This demo will only last you a couple of hours, but it will leave you wanting more. If you have a modded Wii, a copy of Super Mario Galaxy 2, and Revolution, then you owe it to yourself to try out Super Mario Starshine. I'm excited to see what else is in store for this project. This is Takt of Magic, released exclusively in Japan by Taito in 2009. Its prequel, Lost Magic, actually did get localized and released on the Nintendo DS in the West. However, this one was left behind. That was until translator Brand New Man released a full English translation of the game in November of 2020. You are killing it, man. Thank you for your work. You play as a wizard in training named Orwell, who has to defeat all these evil forces that have descended dependent upon his country, using the magic that he learned from his master. Orwell will have to draw out these magic sigils, which will then cast a spell on the enemies on the field. To cast magic, you have to point the Wiimote at the screen and then hold a button and draw out a shape which corresponds to the kind of spell you're going to cast. Meanwhile, the enemies are still marching towards you, and the battle does not pause for this. Sure, some tension is built here, but I feel there could have been a better way to approach this. I feel this kind of gameplay was better suited for the Nintendo DS, where you had faster, more tactile response time, whereas on the Wii, you have to point it at the screen and then shittily draw some sort of glyph and hope it came out to the spell that you wanted. There's really not a whole lot to say about the game. You just move your troops on the field where the bad guys are, cast a spell, kill the bad guys, collect all the points, unlock new spells, of which there are over 100 to master, and then move on to the next stage. For the most part, it's a functional strategy RPG, held back by all the Wiimote drawing aspects of it, but I honestly haven't given it much of a chance. The game just never really clicked with me. I'm happy it's translated, but it's definitely not something I would have bought had it been localized. Sorry, it's just not for me. Maybe 30 hours in, this game gets better, but I'm moving on to other things. Check it out if you're looking for an RTS. There aren't many on the Wii.
Tomena Sanner.
Tomena Sanner was a WiiWare exclusive title released by Konami in 2010. This is an endless runner style game that's played using only one button. You play as this insane Japanese businessman who's just running to the end of the level, jumping and breakdancing on various things throughout to try and make it to the goal in the fastest amount of time, so you can then put your sick breakdancing skills on display for the world to see. You play by trying to get as close as possible to objects before you hit the A button, which will then activate some sort of animation which will allow the businessman to run faster. And if you nail the timing, not only will he pull off crazier animations, but he will pick up speed as well. Throughout the level, there's all sorts of random obstacles and coins to collect and various perks and debuffs. Even though the experience seems shallow on the surface, there's quite a bit of skill involved if you want to maintain your combo. You always have to look ahead and know when to jump and when to dodge the objects on the screen entirely. As things are moving along, you'll notice that there's text on the top and bottom of the screen, often making snarky remarks on what's going on with the businessman. This, of course, was inspired by Nico Nico Doga, the Japanese YouTube, where comments are always flooding the screen. They actually hired a motion capture studio to perform all these animations that you're seeing on the screen, and I have a great time imagining the behind the scenes on this one. My only criticism of Tomena Sanner is that the game moves way too fast, or the businessman will get to the far right of the screen, so sometimes you can't anticipate what's gonna come next, or random things will fly out on the screen and you just don't have enough time to hit the button without failing. But this is one of those kind of games where I don't mind failing because the whole experience itself is so ridiculous that why would I even get mad? Unfortunately, this is a game lost to time with the closure of the eShop, so if you want to play it, you're gonna have to pirate it. But only in the legal sense with no culpability for Hikikomori Media. Thank you.
Yeah, let's go!
Released in 2008 by Goodfeel, Wario Land Shake It was the 6th and final entry in the Wario Land series. And no, I do not count Wario Master of Disguise. This is also known by the more fitting title Wario Land The Shake Dimension and PAL regions. Wario Land Shake It all begins when a pirate named Captain Syrup, who's kind of a rival to Wario, breaks into a museum and steals an ancient globe. She sends this globe to Wario as a present and says there's a big mystery inside, so Wario tries to crack it open, and when he does, a magic telescope pops out, and if Wario looks through this magic telescope, he can then go to different places on that globe, and the globe itself hosts a new dimension called the Shake Dimension, where most of the game takes place. Hence why it's a better title than Shake It. First and foremost, major compliments to the animation here. All the sprites in the game were hand-drawn, and some of them, including Wario's, contain over 2,000 frames. The colors are vivid and the animation is smooth. It's held up well over the years, especially now that there's sort of a resurgence of hand-drawn video games like the Shantae series by WayForward, or all those old Sega games now getting hand-drawn treatments. Wario Land Shake It was ahead of its time. Inside the Shake Dimension, Captain Syrup tells Wario that there's a big pirate named the Shake King that has a bottomless bag of gold coins. This intrigues Wario, so he sets off on a journey to rescue all these magical creatures known as Merfolks to help him track down the Shake King. It's a two-dimensional platformer that takes after the previous games in the series. Wario pretty much has the same moveset. He has a shoulder ram, butt pound, and he has a couple of new moves here. You can shake the Wiimote and Wario will slam the ground, which will knock off objects from platforms. It will stun enemies, and it can also be used to raise certain platforms. Wario still has the ability to pick up enemies and throw them, but now that throwing is guided by tilting the Wiimote. Not a huge fan of this. I'm kind of more of a Yoshi's Island targeting system guy, and I find a lot of the Wiimote implementations to be counterintuitive to the experience for the most part, but they're not the worst on the platform. There's a ton of content here. Each level has 3 treasures to find, and there's also about 4 side objectives to complete for each level, as well as a race to complete after you finish the level. When you get to the end of the level and save the Merfolk, an alarm will go off, and then Wario has to dash back to the entrance of the level. Like previous games, gold is everything, so occasionally you'll come across giant bags of gold, and you guessed it, you gotta shake them to get the most amount of gold, which you can then take back to Captain Syrup's shop, which will help you buy maps to the other stages, as well as other cool perks like health upgrades. I will say, Wario Land Shake It wasn't my favorite in the series, and it still isn't, but it has grown on me over the years. I credit the animation style holding up over time, really fun boss fights, and the extremely long gap since the last entry. Is this a dead franchise, Nintendo? This is still a Wii exclusive, and it's a damn fine one. If you love the Wario Land series, then yes, without a doubt, get this one.
Rock and roll!
The Wii Wario!
Co-developed by Nintendo's software planning and development team and Intelligent Systems, WarioWare Smooth Moves was released in early 2007. Now, I consider this to be one of the best launch titles, even though it missed the console launch date by a month. Outside of Wii Sports and Twilight Princess, this was the game to get. The WarioWare titles are typically glorified tech demos that utilize every unique gimmick of the platform they're developed for. Smooth Moves was built around the Wiimote, aka the Form Baton, and the 200 micro games found creative new ways to utilize it. Wario and the residents of Diamond City all have their own particular form to use for their blend of micro games.
Go!
Don't worry, you're given a rundown of each of the forms by a disembodied Stu Pickles voiceover man.
The dumbbell. Turn the form baton sideways and clutch it from below in your right hand. True masters exhibit a firm grip and an exaggerated grimace.
I just love the spontaneous humor of the micro games, and I feel the cavalier developer spirit where anything goes is still living on in the WarioWare series. It's one of the few first-party titles that's allowed to lampoon the very brand and console it represents. Of course, I can't help but smile whenever I get to the 9 and 18 volt chapters where you play tiny slices of classic Nintendo games. I always look forward to those. Now, it wouldn't be a WarioWare game without all the unlockable mini-games and modes in the post-game. Just when you think it's over, there's a ton more stuff to play. For example, they recreated Balloon Trip as an endless arm flapper, where you use the Wiimote and nunchuck to flap your arms and stay afloat without getting munched on by a fish. There's also a cool block balancing game. I enjoyed playing through this one. On the flip side, there's a frustrating ping-pong / breakout hybrid game where you gotta bounce this ball to get up this tower. I always get stuck on these blocks. And there's a decent target range minigame where you shoot soda cans, barrels, and dynamite coming at you. Now I know some people out there would declare Wii Sports as the definitive Wii game, but honestly, WarioWare Smooth Moves is my personal pick. It's fun to play alone or at a party, and you're gonna look stupid doing it. If you want a crash course on all the features and gimmicks of a Nintendo platform, and you have a functioning sense of humor, then WarioWare Smooth Moves deserves a place on your shelf. You, Me, and the Cubes was a WiiWare exclusive title developed by Fido in 2009. Sadly, it's notable for being the last game developed by Kenji Eno before his untimely death in 2013. Eno was an eccentric developer known for bizarre antics like hand-delivering his games as a high-tier pre-order bonus and bundling condoms with some of his games. To say the least, he was the kind of developer who went places other developers would be too afraid to go. You, Me, and the Cubes is an ethereal platform puzzler where the player tosses these humanoid-like creatures called phallos onto large blocks floating in the middle of space. Balance is the key to progress here. You want to carefully place the phallos on the platform without tipping the other phallos off their platform to their death. You also get points for creating pairs of phallos together. The platforms start to grow more complex and will often teeter, testing the balance of all the phallos on the field. And as the stages move on, they start adding environmental hazards to prevent phallos from landing, like this electrical field here. You, Me, and the Cubes is not the most exciting game in the world, but it is interesting and very soothing to play with a good set of headphones. This is one of those creepy games where eventually someone's gonna discover some dark secret buried in the code that Eno left for us. If you're into oddball experimental games by experimental directors, then check this one out and Kenji Eno's other works. Zack in Wikipedia, Quest for Barbarossa's Treasure, was released in 2007 by Capcom. This was a decent point-and-click adventure that was critically praised but largely ignored by the majority of Wii owners. You play as the dynamic duo, Zack, a child with the dream of becoming the world's greatest pirate, and he's joined by the flying monkey Wiki, who also doubles as a magic bell, I don't know why. They're members of a gang of pirates known as the Sea Rabbits, who are currently being ambushed by the pirate Rose Rock and her crew of scallywags. The game is brimming with personality. All the characters have expressive facial features and theatrical animations. You also get to learn what their favorite food is during the character intro cards. In classic adventure style, you point where you want the characters to move, and then they move. You click on objects, pick them up, or interact with them in some way. Sometimes you enter a minigame to use an item, and you have this naked guy to guide you. No thanks, buddy. I don't need a tutorial for this particular gesture. I'm already a seasoned pro. Zack also has the ability to turn Wiki into a bell by shaking the Wiimote, which is how you attack the enemies in the game. It's used to quite literally objectify them. If you're ever stuck on a puzzle, just try ringing the bell on something and turning it into an item. This is very easy to forget that it's there at all. The duo finds their first treasure chest, and inside is the golden skull of the legendary pirate Barbaros. He negotiates with the fledgling pirate that in exchange for finding the rest of his golden bones, Barbaros will give them his ship and lead them to a secret treasure island. The structure of the missions is broken down into a stage format, where Zack and Wiki have to set off a chain of events to clear the pathway to the treasure chest containing a piece of Barbaros. You earn points and Zenny, the Capcom currency, for solving the puzzles without messing up or asking for a hint, which you can do if you get stuck on a level. And some of these levels are quite cryptic for an aimed at children presenting game. In classic adventure style, you may find yourself dying in ridiculous ways until you figure out the correct sequence of events, and that's part of the fun. I didn't know this at first, but some of the levels have multiple hidden ways to get to the treasure, which gives you a reason to revisit the levels and find out the secret way to beat it. One criticism that I've levied against this over the years are these hidden rhythm games. In some of the levels you can find this skeleton named Bonelick, who will ask you to ring the bell in time with a classic song from a Capcom game. If you do this correctly, he'll give you a treasure.
Hoi, 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 hoi!
In theory, this is really cool, but in practice, it's garbage. The waggling is just not accurate enough, and you'll have to repeat these minigames over and over again until you get lucky. Keep in mind, these minigames are entirely optional, so if you find yourself getting frustrated, just quit and move on. Waggling aside, there's a lot to love about Zack and Wiki, and I consider it an essential Wii game. It's one of the best point-and-click adventures on the platform, and everyone should check this one out. Zangetsu no Reginleiv, aka Blades of the Reginleiv, was released by Sandlot exclusively in Japan in 2010. It really does stick out in my library of Wii games with its black game case and hollow foil logo. By the way, the black cases were Nintendo's way of identifying mature games to Japanese customers. This too got a fan translation, and you'll need Revolution to play it. Zangetsu is a Norse mythology themed action game where you take troops of knights and blow up massive swarms of enemies into chunky limbs and bloody volcanoes using the game's 300 weapons. You could probably guess why this didn't get localized. Now you might already be drawing parallels to the Earth Defense Force series, and well, Zangetsu was made by the exact same team as EDF. It's also a fast-paced action game with next to no story, and the destruction here is the real draw. I wouldn't have it any other way. At the start of every mission, you choose your character and your weapon loadout, and then dash your way towards giant monsters descending upon your village. Then you take said weapon and blow the absolute smithereens out of them. This is the most amount of destruction I've ever seen on the Wii, and the system can barely keep up with it. It's fun to kill the frames. Now, the only criticism I have with Zangetsu involves the melee combat portion, which requires the player to waggle the Wiimote to swing every weapon. I find this to be annoying since these gestures are not optional, and even the classic controller style forces you to use the analog stick to then perform these gestures, instead of just hitting a button to swipe a sword. On the other hand, if you equip the game's many long-range weapons, like these magic staffs that you can craft, you can then blast out spells in a similar fashion to the guns found within EDF. Just make sure you're collecting all the crystals that spill out of the stumps of your foe, as they're used to craft brand new weapons, so you can make more stumps happen. I just love destructible sandbox games that load you up with tons of weapons and fun things to shoot, and I just never grow tired of the genre. It goes without saying, but if you're a fan of the Earth Defense Force series, then go out there and get this game. Shout out to Brand New Man and Gummy for their hard work on this translation. I'm so happy that I finally get to play this. Zombie Panic in Wonderland used to be a WiiWare exclusive title, released in 2007, but now it's been updated and released on everything. The original is still a great game, and I enjoyed it when it first released, so I figured I'd include it. Zombie Panic in Wonderland is a third-person shooting gallery-style game, where you play as one of many protagonists from various Western fables, armed to the teeth with heavy weaponry to take on legions of the undead. There's not a ton going on here. It's just a cute little third-person shooting gallery kind of game where you blow up various enemies and all the background set pieces. You get new weapons to play around with and then use those weapons to blow up other things on the screen. You dodge projectiles, watch a cute little story, and unlock tons of content. Sometimes you just want a simple game to chill with, and this is one of my go-tos. The game starts off simple, but the moment you get to the first boss fight, it's really gonna put you through the paces. As I mentioned before, this has been released on pretty much everything. It recently got a DX version released on Switch, so if you want to play this game in its most optimal fashion, that's probably the way to go. But if you're only rocking a Nintendo Wii, then Hikiko says, check it out. The video might be over, but the waggling has only just begun. My friends, thank you so much for making it through the longest video on my channel. I hope it was worth your time. I have a Wii U version of this video, Wii U upgrades and games, a PS3 version of this video, PS3 upgrades and games. If you enjoyed this one, you're gonna love those ones. They're a bit shorter too. Also, if you want to know more about some of the Wii games featured in this video, I made a playlist of every Wii game I've reviewed. We're talking more of like the retrospective, deep dive, analysis stuff, research. I'm not gonna ask anything more of you, just roll those credits.
It's so easy for me to be crazy. Princess Peach and Daisy and Zelda looks amazing. No, 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 I'm not sure you understand. Take the Wiimote in your hand. Now you understand that it's so easy